Hey everybody, welcome to Transition to Telehealth Day 2. I'll be honest, I'm going to be on a different end of the semi-sane to hot mess spectrum, and I'm going to plate myself a little bit more on the hot mess today, but we're hanging in there. I hope you're all hanging in there. We put this on YouTube just because I didn't know how else to upload it to show to one colleague, and suddenly a couple other people started watching. So full disclosure, I'm doing this for the BCBA Supervisors at CABA, and as I'm going to do here, and I'll explain in a moment why I have to awkwardly use my computer, I do recommend you watch episode 1. In the first 7 minutes, I explain what I'm doing, and I'm going to stop with all of the big picture stuff, and I'm going to jump right in. I will say that it's yet another day, day 2, of what we're calling transition to telehealth, and I still don't know. So I am doing this still based on, all right, we know that we have an obligation to ensure continuity of care for our clients as best as we can. And we know that we're following daily changes in information about essential businesses and providing behavioral and medical treatment to individuals, and the language is actively changing. So in the meantime, we do know that we're going to be providing increased supports probably in some type of telehealth model. So I won't do the whole story again. Watch episode 1. I'm going to breathe. It's been a long day, guys. I'm going to sneak these in. I'm going to try my hardest, one a day, all right? So let's do this. I slap together slides in 5 minutes. But again, as always, I really hope this is helpful. And please remember, we cannot take care of other people unless we're taking care of ourselves. So I'll calm down because I know part of my job is to not act like this, but whew, it's been a long day. Oh, one thing, I promise I'm going to get to the content. One thing, and I hope no one takes this the wrong way. All right, there's a lot of people that are either working from home right now, and a lot of people that aren't working. And I hope everyone is feeling unbelievably healthy, well, and this has nothing to do with if someone is working or not working. But I do want to let you guys know that those of you on social media, just remember that a lot of your friends are not only working just as much now, they're actually working even harder. So, just to be mindful of that, because I love seeing the happiness. Please keep doing it, because we're doing all this work to make sure that people are happy and safe and healthy, but just be mindful. Okay, that's it, guys. That was my moment for my supervisors. I hope it was a good one. All right, guys, so what am I going to talk about? I got to click because I'm reading backwards, and I got to awkwardly look. Let's see. I said back to the basics. What is ABA? Do not worry. I'm not going to give you a Google definition. Important T.T.T considerations. I'm now calling it transition to telehealth, so T.T.T is what we're talking about. Overview of the clinical programming process. I'll explain this in a second. And considerations for caregiver training, just a brief overview. And actually, I'm probably not even going to get to that last point. I think I will do that for you guys next time. But BCBA's CABA watched the video yesterday. We asked for a list of topics. It's becoming really clear that our supervisors are having to kind of step back and revisit clinical programming and what adjustments might need to be made to your clinical programming. And I had to spend some time on this today, a little bit, in between everything else, thinking, all right, well, there's people who are doing exactly the same job right now, but you're probably likely having to adjust your clinical programming because there's pretty much no chance that in that home setting it is not dramatically different. And let's remember, guys, we are constantly responding to all of the stimuli in our environment all the time, regardless of whether we're aware of it or not, and not necessarily in some antecedent behavior consequence kind of way. Everything going on is getting paired constantly. So individuals that are receiving ABA services, their environments pretty much by definition have dramatically changed. So this is hopefully helpful for you to step back and think, all right, the environment's different. What kind of adjustments might I need to make even though the services are the same? Also helpful for people that had been primarily providing in-person services and now are moving to do telehealth. This is for the BCBA level, so I'm always going to say caregiver. We don't know if it's a direct staff member working with the individual or if it's a family member or a friend. And this is the way we're going to have to start thinking about the clinical programming decisions that we make, because not only might the policy keep changing, but the makeup of these households and the nature of the services might keep changing. So that's why I'm going to bring you guys back to the basics and just say, okay, let's stop. What's ABA? Let's just try to pause, remember, and realize that if you've been working on some sorting colors program for the last 3 years, chances are not necessary to work on that right now, but we'll get into some specific tips for you, okay? All right, guys, I said I was going to start with what is ABA. I promised you I'm not going to be like applied behavior analysis isn't, no, stop. I am going to make us all stop though and say, all right, we have to remember that what we're talking about is that behavior is a function of its environment, right? And it's a technical statement. And I was like, oh, come on, Rachel, don't do this. Please, guys, you have to do this, all right? We have to stop and say, behavior is a function of its environment. And right now, more than ever, when we are providing support to people, potentially on an electronic platform, we need to make sure that we are communicating to the people on the other side of that screen that are providing support to that individual, who we are ethically obligated to do everything we can for to maintain a higher quality of life and increased independence, as independence is independently defined for that person, that those people understand that they're the environment, okay? So behavior is a function of its environment. So this is the time when we're talking to people in an incredibly empathetic way to say, look, the individual that you're working with, your child, whoever you're supporting, the person who's receiving this ABA support, their behavior, including their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, is a function of what is happening around them, their environment. And that is the person that, if you are the BCBA on this side of the screen, that's what you need to help that person understand. And not in some like, it's your responsibility, it's gonna be your fault. No, it's a powerful thing if you really understand it that way, right? So if something's happening and it's a behavior that we know is not beneficial for this person, you're now giving them that tool of saying, you have the power to help change this behavior. And yeah, your kid might be sad and frustrated right now, and chances are when we change their behavior, those feelings obviously are changing along as well. And true ABA programming is based on a foundation of reinforcement-based and least restrictive. As we're challenging ourselves right now to think about more social distancing, to think about decreased ratios, let's remember our ethical obligation is to be at least restrictive. So let's take this as a challenge and be like, all right, what can we do to try to provide these services in this one step away, but remind everybody that whoever is interacting with the individual, that they are influencing both the occurrence of good behavior and awesome thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and the occurrence of quote unquote bad behavior, and likely not necessarily feeling good. Although I know you're all thinking about the one client that has that huge grin on their face when it's time to throw down, right? All right, I get it. Don't forget that behavior is a function of its environment. Let's figure out how to get that huge grin on their face. What is the reinforcing part of it? Is it the attention? Dig into it. Go back to your tools, all right? Because the question, right? I used to always say it's bridging the chronological and functional age gap. So right now you're facing telehealth, you're facing having to readjust your clinical programming. Your first step should be to go back again and say, well, hold up. My whole job has always been to say, chronologically, this child has been identified via all our assessments as being 10 years old. Sorry, chronologically, if you heard people are talking, sorry. Chronologically, this child, based on their date of birth, is 10 years old. We did a bunch of assessments from the VB map to this, insert that here, fine. All those did. You can also go to the American Academy of Pediatrics and look at the developmental milestones, guys. Go back to some more basic programming right now, by the way. But, then you did your assessments and we said functionally the person's 7 years old, right? Most of my career in ABA, I always said our job was to bridge that gap, to say we're coming in there now to help that 10-year-old function more like a 10-year-old and not a 7-year-old. I've realized, especially when CABA started expanding across ages, and especially when I had to question what truly defines quality of life and independence, and how some families might always want to be feeding their individual child who is non-ambulatory and cannot feed themselves, or maybe possibly can, but don't want to push that goal because in their culture, in their family, that's a sign of love, right? Okay, I had to start to adjust this and say, okay, it's not just about bridging the chronological functional age gap, although that needs to be the case, especially in early intervention. And right now we're seeing a disruption in services, which means that we are going to not only see progress, but we will see regression. So we've got to focus on this. But right now, as you're adjusting, let's also say, I gotta get some water. Right now, while you're adjusting, let's also say, hold up, what defines independence? What defines quality of life? Because that's why we're bridging that gap, is only if it's improving quality of life. What is a quality of life for the people that you're supporting right now? And is your clinical programming aligning with that? All right, guys, let's keep going. So back to the basics as well. What did I say? I said, under what environmental conditions is increased language more likely to occur? And then I gave a bunch of examples. Let's see if I can remember some. All right, guys, what was I doing here? Again, back to the basics. You're reapproaching your clinical programming. Let's say we know that this individual struggles with appropriate language. You had made progress. You're worried it's going away. You're now adjusting how it is that you're giving guidance to either the staff member or the parent to work on things. Stop. Don't start flipping through your curriculums and your teaching strategies. I mean, do that, yeah, sure, but let's just stop. If we know increased language needs to happen, just stop and say, right now, under what conditions is increased language likely to occur for this individual? Because really what we want to make sure is that we're just continuing to practice skills. Sure, we want to improve new ones, but let's make sure we're taking every opportunity to reinforce those ones that we've already taught. So just stop and say, okay, this is just one example I went with language. When you're taking the behavior as a function of its environment approach to your clinical programming, which again is now more important than ever before, your first step needs to be to say, okay, what's the desired skill? And under what current conditions is that desired skill more likely to occur? Hopefully you can see some of the ones that I listed there, right? I said, is this an individual that responds really well to an echoic prompt? Great. Is this an individual that you know is really more likely only going to talk if they're holding something that they like and you have to take it away for a second and they say it appropriately and you give it right back and have a party? Great. That is the environmental condition under which that behavior is more likely to occur. That's what you need to be arranging for. That's what you need to be telling the people to arrange, is that you are the environment and you need to change your behavior to increase the likelihood that this skill is going to happen. I wouldn't worry as much about your level of prompts and the types of prompts, right? We got to go with the basics here. What type of thing or moment needs to happen in the environment that's going to increase the likelihood that that desired behavior is going to happen so we can reinforce it? So we are going back to the ABCs, but I'm pushing you way more on the A end of things right now, right? What else did I say here? I said, oh, obviously, same thing for independent play, problem behavior, self-help, leisure skills. So I just gave you a language example, but you need to go back and recognize that that framework works for anything that we're talking about. So stop and say, under what environmental conditions is X or Y more or less likely to occur? And is your clinical programming ensuring that those environmental conditions are going on? That the staff member, that the family member is arranging the environment in a way to improve the appropriate behavior and decrease the inappropriate behavior. And we all know those both need to be going on at the same time. I hope this is helpful. Like, I just got all super lectury. I don't know what happened. I was tired and I'm all, yeah. Whatever, guys, we're doing this together. What did I say? Change the environment and we can change behavior. Whoa, am I right now? All right, that's really hard to see. I'm not going to spend a lot of time of it. I don't have my timing on me today, do I? Oh, yeah, I'm doing decent. I created a clinical decision map many years ago, actually. I said I wouldn't storytell, and then I pause. I see I have time, and I'm ready to be like, let me tell you when. All right, I'll make it quick. I'll plug Behavior Babe. Please, guys, listen to the podcast that I did with Behavior Babe. It was called Defining the Magic. And what had happened was that there was a company, a large company in LA that provided floor time services. And the owner, his mother who owned it, passed away. And he called me and said, you know, I'm in charge of this company. And he was relatively young, younger than me. And I realized that ABA is now being recognized as the more evidence-based approach to helping children diagnosed with autism relative to floor time, and he was floor time trained himself. And he said, I'd like to take my 100+ employees and our whole company and change it from floor time to ABA. And I was the consultant who came in and got to do that. And it really made me have to reevaluate a lot of the practices that we had gotten into in ABA that I realized were just practices. They weren't evidence-based in and of themselves. They were practices to push out evidence-based information, but we hadn't evaluated how we were doing that. So specifically, if we were training people, telehealth or otherwise, we would be like, all right, we're gonna start with, you know, what is autism? Okay, what is ABA? What are preferences? What is reinforcement? Here's the 3-term contingency. Let's talk about discrete trials. And then we're gonna, pretty much some version of that was the format. And I always tell the story about how I had to really be like, well, hold up. These guys know what they know what ABA is, and they're actually pretty much opposed to it. So I got to deal with that whole thing. And they definitely know what autism is. And why do I start in that order anyway? And I do need to value the work that they've done to this point, trying to help the individual, just like the families you're going to be helping on telehealth right now. Whether it's the staff member or the parent, everyone in that scenario has been doing their best to help the person. You're the expert because you know how to tell them what subtle changes in how they're behaving, what they're doing in the environment, how it seems like it's helpful, is possibly not doing the basic thing of improving the behaviors that we want more of and decreasing the behaviors we want less of, right? So I just went off on a tangent. Let's see if I can come all the way back. Oh, I hope I can. I am tired, guys. Hold on. Ooh, that was a big tangent. Wait. Darn it, you guys are the experts. Oh, man, and I need someone here who could usually do it, so at least people are laughing and going with me right now. Back to floor time. I got it. With that crew, I ended up starting with saying, you're doing something that is hopefully helping the kids. You might be doing some things that aren't helping the kids. Let's talk about measurement. So I started with that in trying to get the buy-in from them of Measurement is just us being able to demonstrate that what we're doing is working. So I'm just saying all of this right now to remind you guys that we have to come back to some of the basics. And when I started with that crew, I found myself saying, I don't even want to get into all of the different types of prompting procedures, or I came from training of like, mass trials versus random rotation and extended trials, right? And I got BCBAs on here that have only been with adults the whole time, and they're like, what is she talking about, right? Stop. This is a clinical program and decision map. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll click to a slide where you can see it better. And it really just gives a breakdown that, again, this is about transitioning to telehealth. You're on day 2. Yesterday, I gave you a super simple, practical activity schedules, gave you some points on that. I'm actually going to review them right before I end in the next couple minutes here. My take-home point for you, hopefully you guys got today. I know it was extra babbly. Give me a break. I'll clean it up tomorrow. I know it was helpful. Come on, it was helpful, right? Back to the basics. What does this say? Step 1, review the assessment results and establish operational definitions. If you're going straight to treatment with a new telehealth, if you have a current client, it's just adjusted, whatever it is, you start right away with what are the top 3 things that that parent or whoever's in charge of that person wants to see more of, and what are the top 3 things that they think are impeding a quality of life for this person. Let's go to the basics. You talk to those top 3 things, operationally define them. Let's start improving behavior, all right? You're gonna look at the things that are excesses, behavioral developmental excesses, so problem behaviors that we need to decrease versus behavioral development deficits, desired behaviors to increase, all right? You separate them out into 2 categories. Take a step back and say, am I doing all the steps to say for both a good behavior and a bad behavior? I gotta figure out the common antecedents and the common consequences that are in place right now. And I have to decide whether or not this is about teaching a new skill to improve more and or putting in some type of programming to help decrease the problem behavior, right? That is about teaching the replacement behavior is the key component in this. I'm going fast right now just to remind you guys to step back. Operational definitions, increasing or decreasing, figure out the function, figure out the why, and identify the desired replacement behavior. In this moment, you already now know if it's a problem behavior, what's currently going on for the antecedents and what are currently going on for the consequences need to change. The replacement behavior now, you can move on over here and say, determine an appropriate teaching strategy for that desired behavior. I'm not going to read the whole bottom thing to you guys. It's just our 3 main teaching strategies. I'm not trying to diminish the work we do and to be like it's this basic, but kind of is sometimes, right? Structured teaching, discrete trial, is it a discrete response? Is it something that would be good to practice again and again and again? Clear beginning, clear end. Natural environment training, is this a behavior that you want to be occurring across settings, across people? Is there already a bunch of natural opportunities throughout your day, which is now following an activity schedule? Or task analyses, multiple steps to get to the desired behavior. Go back to the basics, guys. All right, guys. I'm going to end on this important transition to telehealth considerations, and I said emphasis on transition only because I haven't thought this through too much. And I hesitate to throw out another thing. People who know me well know, they're like, oh my gosh, it's www, what's the problem? Why is it a problem? What about, okay, I make you do that, then I make you scientist practitioner it out, and I make you have to say, all right, what did the research say to you? Are you consuming the research? Are you disseminating it? Now I'm gonna give you a bunch of other stuff. It seems to be a consistent theme. When I was asked to do just a general, what am I gonna need to do to adjust my clinical programming, I will extend this and give you way more specifics too, guys. I had to go broad today. When I'm asked to do that, and the same way asked to talk about something like activity schedules, I found myself coming back to these points. I think these are going to be our top considerations and can get broader and broader, and I'll try and build on these when it comes to transitioning to telehealth. So meaning, I don't know if these are going to be the same things if you were already in telehealth or if you're launching a new client, although I think they are. I just need a little more time on it. Number 1, format. I talked about it yesterday with activity schedules. It's with everything. Any teaching program that you're putting in place or any program that you're putting in place to decrease a problem behavior, let's say you have a token board involved, got to think about the format, and format can go broader, right? Format can be the teaching style, the stimuli, format, consider format. Number 2, consider response effort, both for the individual and for the caregiver, and right about now, let's decrease that response effort as much as we can because we're all going cray-cray. All right, I didn't mean that badly, sorry. Number 3, access to preferred items and activities. Make sure that's happening regularly, not too much though. We don't want to drag those things into the ground, right, and make the people not like them anymore. Then we're going to run out of those preferred activities, but still we got to look at those very much in our programming at every step. Independent interactive targets, really what I said yesterday about the activity schedule should apply to you and your overall clinical programming right now. Are you targeting behaviors that require independence on the part of the individual? Are you targeting behaviors that require, and I mean independence meaning they're doing something by themselves for a relatively extended period of time. We want them to be independent with everything we're teaching, or is it something that it's like a conversation, engaging in playing a game, and are you helping that individual and the people around them to capitalize on what we know about how to maintain good levels of responding and some type of a good schedule of reinforcement. I can geek it out on that one for you too. Finally, I wrote structure equals predictability. I don't know, I said I did these in 5 minutes. For some reason that made sense to me then, and maybe it did now, for I did the same thing. I kept bringing it back to what I said about activity schedules. I'm actually telling you to take that same advice, which is this slide, and apply it to all of your clinical programming. All right, guys, a little over 20 minutes this time. I'll do better next time. I'm not gonna fix these. I just gotta go for it. I'll go shorter, more precise. Give me your feedback. Tell me what I'm doing okay as well, please. And hang in there, guys. Gotta make sure we're taking care of ourselves. If we're not doing that, can't help anyone else. Thanks, everyone.